Hello, sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union Pod, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking MLS and UCL and Europa and the league champions from over there in Europe and U.S. men's national team and Mystic Pizza and Brazil's all-time best 11, synthetic surfaces, those who wish me dead, some, which would be Soccer United marketing, water skiing, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday, May 24th in the year 2021?
I am doing well, although I am going to receive a tongue lashing from my mother because I did not budget enough time this morning to shave. This is the scruffiest I've ever looked in the 3 years we've been doing this podcast. And I did rationalize that you would probably look scruffy as well. And it turns out this morning you are clean shaven. So I am sticking out like a sore thumb.
You look okay. You look rugged, I think, would be appropriate here. I mean, not disheveled in any way, in any more way than you normally do. I think you look beautiful, my friend. Okay, what have you been watching or listening to or reading out there when it comes to the last week?
Well, because we worked late last night on MLS, I am one episode behind on Mayor of Easttown. I have that recorded. I can't wait to watch it as soon as we're done taping. I did watch this past week a couple of things. This show, Beer Town, that was recommended to me by my buddy Dan Houtman about this hockey team in this small Swedish town. I don't know if you're familiar with that program at all, but I highly recommend it. Very well done. Just 5 episodes, and it's over and done with. So
it's over and done, right? After 5, right?
Correct.
All right, then I will check it out. Is the mayor of Easttown, is that done? Because I tried to look it up the other day. I couldn't understand whether it was done or not.
So it's 7 episodes, and it's unclear whether they're going to do more seasons beyond this. They've left the door slightly open. I don't think so, though. I think it's probably safe for you to binge this one when it's done. There's the final episode will be next Sunday. The other thing I watched was this HBO documentary, Crime of the Century. This was recommended to me by Keith Costigan about the pharmaceutical industry and the opioid crisis and all that. And it dovetails nicely with this book I plan to read, written by Patrick Radden Keefe.
About well, don't brag. Don't brag. So, we know you read. Okay. That's fine.
But I recommend checking that out as well. Very powerful.
Okay. I will check out. Let's see what I watched this week. In the retro mode, I went back and watched a movie called Mystic Pizza, which was popular at the time. It was kind of the coming out party for some different actors that you may have heard of. Lily Tyler, I think, and what's her name? What's the pretty woman's name?
Julia Roberts.
Yeah. Vincent D'Onofrio. So a lot of different people kind of got their start in that movie. It's a cute movie. I think it still holds up. That was cool. And then I went and watched something. You know how they're doing movies that normally in normal times would go into the theater, but now they're kind of giving you a preview or enabling you to watch it on the streaming services. So HBO has this movie called Those Who Wish Me Dead, which is Angelina Jolie. Okay. And she is this forest fire fighter. Okay. And it's not a very good movie. And you're a little distracted by how beautiful Angelina Jolie is in this. And you're left scratching your head going, is that what all the forest fighter people look like out there? Because if that's the case, that's pretty amazing. But the movie's not that good to begin with. But I did watch that. Anything else before we move on here, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, listen. As we've started to do, we're bringing in some different people and some different voices, and we've brought in someone today that's going to join us here, and he is someone that a lot of soccer people out there will have known if you've been around for any length of time, and some people that we know listen and watch this show that will be introduced. Some will be reintroduced, some will be introduced. He is an incredibly smart person, and incredibly interesting person when it comes to the way that he thinks about soccer, and he was kind of in the first way of American pundits out there, curmudgeons out there, if you will. I'm talking about the legendary and the great Simon Borg, who is joining us. Simon, welcome to the State of the Union.
Thank you, Alexi. I like to use, instead of curmudgeon, firebrands. And, I'm just following in your footsteps when it comes to that.
All right. So listen, you've been laying low for the past year. You worked for a number of years where we saw your work both on camera and off the camera at Major League Soccer, where you were the editor-in-chief and also a personality in terms of the content that came out there for a number of years. And then you kind of went behind the camera and behind the scenes and did a whole lot of stuff that maybe we didn't necessarily see directly, but you were directly responsible for a lot of the strategy and a lot of the content that came out there. As we know, this past year and a half has been crazy for the world. You and a number of people were let go from Major League Soccer. But I woke up this morning and I was so excited to see, which is why I called this Audible, that you are, for lack of a better phrase, getting back in the game. You are the new senior soccer editor at Sporting News. So congratulations, first off, on the new gig. Tell the folks out there what this will entail when it comes to what Simon Borg is going to be doing. No, thank you, Alexi. I'm excited for it. Sporting News, it's a brand that a lot of us grew up with, right? And a lot of people know. And even as recently for the soccer audience out there, they'll remember Brian Strauss, who wrote one of the biggest pieces in the last decade for Sporting News back in 2014, I believe. So they have now made a decision. They opened a position that they are going to get back into the soccer coverage game. And I'm honored to be part of it. I mean, I grew up with Sporting News. And if you told 13-year-old Simon that I'd be working with Sporting News one day doing this for soccer, I wouldn't have believed you. So the idea is we're covering soccer for a North American audience. So whatever is interesting for a North American fan, that's what we're after. We're going to look to stand out from the rest and have original observations and come at it with a different voice. And that's going to be the work that we're going to be doing here. The plans are coming together, but there are a lot of big plans for the future. So Sporting News, it's a great thing that a national brand like Sporting News can get back into serving the fans for soccer. There's a lot of fans that consume Sporting News content, so now they'll be getting a big dose of soccer. Will we see the personality? Will we see the character, if you will, and the performance, if you will, that we came to associate with you when you were more in front of the camera and more front and center when it came to the punditry, I guess, out there?
That's part of the idea here. It's an opportunity to connect with fans differently than I maybe did in the past, where we were managing things for the last few years. And by the way, my time at MLS was fascinating to be part of the digital transformation in media. I learned a lot. So glad to bring it here, and but also to bring the same opinion and debate and
okay, all right, well, hold on, because you know, I want to make sure that you're up to it. I want to make sure that you still have your chops. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question that I actually asked everybody out there last week, and that is this: if you were the MLS commissioner, all right, and you had to, I mean, you just had to get rid of one team for the better and for the league, which MLS team do you think you would say, I'm sorry, but you're gone? For the good of the business. You got to pick one.
You say for the good of the business. I don't think getting rid of any teams is good for the business.
Okay, I get that. Don't do that.
But you know, I think
which can you afford to lose the most?
I mean, you'd afford to lose the team with the smallest following, but it would be so unfair to those fans.
Who's that?
You know, take your pick on smaller market, but even smaller market teams, that's not even a definition, right? I mean, because some of the smaller market teams have large followings in their small markets.
Come on, Simon. This is not the Simon that I grew up with. This is not the Simon that I know. Come on. It doesn't mean that this is going to happen.
Yeah. I know. How about this? Fuse the New York City FC and New York Red Bulls and make one team in New York and make it just the absolute beast of a team. So one of the New York teams.
There's only one team actually in New York. So you're saying, what I hear you saying is that the New York Red Bulls should go away.
No. They should fuse.
No, that's what I heard.
Combine their financial muscle.
That's why. Mosse, what do you think? Who would you pick?
I don't know. I want to take this conversation a different direction, Simon, because my favorite MLS score of the past couple of years is Columbus Crew Fans 2, ALEXI LALAS 0. They saved the team. They saved the name. On both occasions, Alexi mocked their efforts and then ended up looking wrong in the end. What did you make of this whole Columbus Crew kerfuffle? What are your thoughts in general on these MLS rebrands and teams trying to sound European and this whole issue of should they embrace more their Americanism? What did you make of all that?
Look, I'm as fascinated by it as Alexi is, right? Teams are trying to appeal to as wide an audience as they can. And we know that the brand matters a lot in terms of who you're speaking to and the audiences you're speaking to. Sometimes, the brand, experts get involved and start coming up with theories. Look, ultimately, I believe the fans do have a voice in this. And I'm glad that the Columbus fans did have their voice. And working with ownership, they came up to a solution that works, and now Alexi's wearing the T-shirt. So I just think it's important for fans to have a say in this. They have to help in shaping these marks and brands and what they're about, and also how long they exist and how they're tweaked. And we need more. We need fans to be part of that process. I think sometimes I feel it's unfair on fans to just have a logo dumped on them. I think it's important. Look, do these logos always, almost in time, we all kind of get used to them, and then they really don't become as important? Yes, but I think fans have to have a say in this. Alexi, I know your position on it, but I think incorporating fans, it's only good for business to do that.
I'm not saying that fans don't deserve a voice or shouldn't have a say. That's not what I'm saying at all. All right, listen. Let's get into some MLS stuff. We had another hell of a weekend with wonderful goals and wonderful stories on and off the field that were going on. We find ourselves on this Monday morning, Mosse, with a New England Revolution sitting at the top of the heap, a Nashville SC sitting in fourth place, and then some usual suspects where we expect them. Cincinnati last place, although they did get a win. Chicago sitting at the bottom down there. And then we go to the Western Conference. Seattle is still the cream of the crop, despite the fact that Atlanta came into Seattle yesterday. And I think Seattle let them off the hook, to be quite honest with you, but that's still a great result for Atlanta. And we saw Joseph Martinez score. So that was a good thing. LAFC, Carlos Vela back on the field, and LAFC getting their wins, but there's still a long way to go going forward. And we have the summer months upon us right now. Mosse, when you look at the situation right now with Major League Soccer, what stood out to you from this past week or this past weekend?
Well, first off, the NYCFC Columbus game was absolutely remarkable. We talked last week about Columbus's struggles, and they were headed for another defeat. And then Lucas Zelarayan pulls 2 free kicks out of his hat. And next thing you know, they pick up a victory. But all is not well there with Columbus. They need to get back on track. It wasn't a great performance. NYCFC was the better team, deserved to win the game. Nevertheless, it did show the value of a player like Zelarayan to be able to do that and get them a much needed 3 points. So
you're still not buying Columbus then, even though they're the defending champs and they have a brand new stadium and they fought to get the name back and everything's going well. And it should be said they came into, well, they were supposed to come into New York, but they came into New Jersey and actually beat NYCFC, and NYCFC was playing at Red Bull Arena. 2 incredible free kicks, 2 very, very different free kicks. One was pure power, and if you can find them out there, find them because they're worth watching. One was pure power from, 30 yards out, and Sean Johnson, the goalkeeper for NYCFC, even though he saw it the entire way, there was nothing he could do. The thing was moving all over the place. It was going like a rocket. And then the second one, which ended up being the winning goal, now this habit of the teams have of lying down underneath the wall, even with a guy lying down under the wall, he said, I'm still going to go up and over from pretty close in. He got it up and down into the upper corner with much more of a graceful shot. So great result for Columbus. A great performance individually from him. But to your point, I do think that Columbus is not where it needs to be yet in terms of living up and filling the potential. Simon, what stuck out to you?
The Columbus result, and then Portland. I think the Portland Timbers winning as they did against the hot team in the Galaxy and the hottest player in the league in Chicharito. I think having Portland and Columbus, teams with expectations going into this year, winning, I'd say somewhat convincingly. and coming back into contention. I think we all knew they weren't going to drift off, but that Portland win, I think Giovanni Savarese and that team, he can get that team to respond to him. I don't think they're ever out of it. They're going to ever be out of it this year. I think he can really rally that team to come up with big performances like that one. I think he has a good feel for his squad. So I think Portland being back in the mix is, I think, really good for MLS if they're contending. So that and Atlanta, I think for Atlanta, that's such a huge result in Seattle and about what they're building. And one of the observations I had from this weekend was just, the coaches that we have in MLS. I think we talk about the golden era for players and all the investment happening with players and the stars and players like Zelarayan. But I'm just continually impressed by the coaches and the coaching in MLS. And I think we're in the golden era of coaching in MLS, to be honest. When you look at the teams that are leading the pack, when you look at the teams that are improving, I think there are a lot of great soccer minds out there, some of whom are American, and they continue to do a great job with their squad. Savarese being one of them, Porter being another, just smart people managing teams. And you need these CEOs that run these squads and run these investments. And, I continue to be impressed by the level of coaching and yeah, those were some of the observations from the weekend.
Let me ask you a question, Simon, because you worked so long for the actual league, and even though you're pumping out content, and I always looked at it with the recognition that this is the league, and so therefore there's going to be stuff you can talk about, there's going to be stuff you can't, there's going to be shading, there's going to be bias, there's going to be all that kind of stuff, and I just factored it into anything that you or anybody else said, because it's not as if anybody was trying to hide that. Now, and look, we all have relationships, and this isn't about, dumping on anybody, including MLS. I think all of us on this call and all of us that listen to this show want MLS to do well. But if in a certain sense you're freed up to be more critical and to talk about some different things, what are some things now that you feel more comfortable or free to talk about when it comes to Major League Soccer? And I guess more big picture right now, as opposed to just the weekend. When you look at this little league that has grown so much on and off the field and into 26 years that you have been such a part of right now, what are some of the things that you look at, good or bad, right now that you maybe would focus on if somebody asked you, which I'm doing right now?
Yeah, look, I think we actually had a lot of liberty to talk about what's between the lines at MLS. And as long as it was happening between the lines, we were good. I think, the trickier parts for, when you're working on that side of the fence is, when you're talking about maybe decisions by, executives and ownership and that kind of thing, and having frank discussions that way. So, being in an independent media, on an independent media side, I think, as you said, you have relationships, but perhaps you can, speak more directly about, things like the Columbus Crew rebrand and, decisions, again, made by the organizations that are big talking points and conversation points. But for the most part, I'd say between the lines, and you see it today, MLS digital channels, and we always tried to be authentic, really tackle anything happening between the lines without hiding much. I mean, we used to tackle it head on. And I think, the likes of Andrew Wiebe, Matt Doyle, they still do, and they treat it fairly. And as long as it's between the lines, stuff that's outside the lines, that stuff is a little trickier. But for the most part, I thought we had a lot of editorial liberty, to be quite honest.
Mosse, anything MLS-wise you want to delve into here before we move on to U.S. men's national team?
Well, last thing, Simon, we did a segment on one of our pregame shows this past weekend talking about MLS's growing ability to sign young South American talent and how, particularly recently, they seem to have cracked the Brazilian market and are creating a pipeline of young Brazilian players. We've seen Brenner, Caio Alexandre, now Thales Magno. So, obviously, if the right veteran guy like a Zlatan or Rooney, or in the coming years, Messi, Ronaldo wants to come, they're still more than welcome. But I think it's fair to say we've seen, generally speaking, a shift here in philosophy. And are you in favor of that? How much do you like seeing the fact that MLS clubs can now go and sign 18, 19-year-old Brazilian, Argentinian, Colombian, Ecuadorian players?
Yeah, look, I think it's great. But I think what needs to happen now is the clubs need to be able to grow the value of these players and be able to sell them off. So I think you need to have a lot more Miguel Almirons of the world. So I think teams now need to see the result of that investment materialize in the form of a transfer. So I think if that can happen, and that's the whole goal here of investing more in younger players, that's going to have to start picking up. Obviously, the last year or so, is going to do a number on the transfer market. But I think in time, this is what is appealing to the young player in South America. They know they can come to MLS, make a name for themselves, show that they can play at a high level and in a certain type of league, and then prove attractive to teams abroad. And with American players achieving what they're achieving abroad, I think international markets are now open to players coming out of North America, whether they're American or whether they're international. So I think that's the key now. It's continue to scout, continue to find these gems, but then you got to know how to grow their value and sell them off. So
but isn't that just a feeder league? I mean, if it's going to be a league of choice, at some point, don't you have to be able to keep them here, whether it's players that you're buying coming over here or whether it's your domestic talent here? I mean, if I'm a season ticket holder, why should I buy tickets if it's just a way station until something better comes along?
Yeah, I've always heard that, Alexi, and I don't buy into that. I think it's a misnomer to say that, just because you have a good player, you have to keep them. I don't think that's necessarily the case. If it makes your club better, so if I'm a fan, I'm more about my club getting better. So if I have to sell a player to then get the funds I need to get maybe 2 or 3 better players, or to do something in my academy that's going to make my club better and make me proud as a fan long term, that is totally in play, and it happens all around the world. So being part of the market and selling players, but by the way, they're also buying players. So I don't know, this idea of a feeder league is just because you're selling players, you're a feeder league. I don't buy into that. I think it's a necessary part of being part of the world transfer market. And MLS, I think MLS teams are starting to now get more sophisticated in that area. And I think we'll see even more activity in the years ahead.
Mosse, we've talked a bunch of times over the last year on the pod about the future of Major League Soccer and what it ultimately looks like. I don't think I've ever asked you when the concept and the notion of the MLS and Liga MX, becoming one, or whatever the hell that looks like. Mosse, this is to you first. I don't think I've ever asked you this. Do you think that one is going to happen? 2, do you think that that's a good thing?
It sounds like there's a good possibility it'll happen. B, I have mixed feelings about it. I do like the idea of each country having its own domestic league with its own culture and then coming together. I'm in favor of creating as many competitions as possible where they compete against each other, but I like the idea of each country still having its own domestic league. I don't know how Simon feels about that.
Yeah, I'm with you, David. I think there's value to the teams, to each team being in their own country, and again the culture and the rivalries and the matchups that play into that. But I would be sure as heck curious to see how it could work if there was a combination. So the story part of me, the story idea part of me would love to see that take shape, right? From the content side, it would give us a lot to talk about. But I think you can still do it both ways. That being said, the calendar continues to get tougher and tougher to manage. But I'd love to see it, at least try it out. And I think if it does happen, we're already seeing it gradually. It'll happen. So it's in Leagues Cup, Campeones Cup, and but we definitely need more meaningful competition. I agree with you there, David.
Well, let's switch over to the U.S. men's national team, because in your new capacity over there at the Sporting News, I know your mandate is to serve the North American soccer fan, right? And it's a unique animal, right? We are all this unique animal. We think globally, we act locally. I think we have a palette and a spectrum of soccer that's so different and unique. And so trying to serve that is important, but obviously a huge part of that diet revolves around the national team, whether it's the Canadian national team, the U.S. national team, or other national teams that are supported even within North America. So turning to the men's national team, which has a very, very big summer under Greg Berhalter, with the CONCACAF Nations League upon us, with Gold Cup upon us. And then as we get into the late parts of the summer and the early part of fall, obviously, the biggie, which is the qualification process and World Cup qualifying for next summer's World Cup. Before we get into the roster for the CONCACAF Nations League, which is out as we speak, Simon, just in general, the U.S. men's national team, as you see it on this May 24th, 2021, because I don't think, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've been in a more positive or optimistic time when it comes to how we view not only our men's national team, but I guess our men's professional soccer players out there that are qualified for playing for the U.S. men's national team.
Agreed. And I think it's a combination of seeing what these players are accomplishing abroad, one. Two, when they're coming together, we'll have our debates around different matchups, results, decisions made in games. But for the most part, when you look at the body of work since Greg Berhalter has taken over, the team has had ideas. They have a purpose. They have a plan when they're on the field. Sometimes the plan works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the actors don't make it happen or don't execute on the day. But there clearly are ideas that have been passed along to these players that we're now seeing in games. And it's starting to look better. So again, we can debate over individual games and instances, but that's why. And I think Greg Berhalter has gone out of his way to make sure that the air around the team is positive, is strong. There were moments, I remember when Zach Steffen talked about how, what the vibe was like, that maybe the vibe wasn't its best in camp, and that was quickly defused. And I think he's assembled a team that really is now believing. And I think as you get closer to the World Cup, players want to be part of this team. And I think we're starting to see that team take shape. I think the team that is going to take care, is going to be part of the U.S. for Nations League, that team that's going to play those games, this is the team. This is the team that's going into qualifying. This is the team, save for a couple of spots, you imagine, that will probably go to the World Cup in a year. So I think, Greg Berhalter has done a great job at again, he's very deliberate about what he's building here. And I think they've done a great job.
All right, real quick, we're going to go through it. Goalkeepers, and this is for the two games that are in the CONCACAF Nations League. They're bracketed by two friendlies, but this is the roster that has come out for these two games. You start I guess it would be a semifinal game against Costa Rica. If you win, then it looks like you would probably play Mexico in the final. That's what kind of everybody wants. But they're two meaningful games against two quality opponents. Ethan Horvath from Bruges. David Ochoa from RSL and Zach Steffen from Man City. Keep in mind, he won't be there for that first friendly game because he's got something bigger in the form of a Champions League final to be a part of. Not necessarily playing, but certainly be a part of. Defenders, John Brooks, who we know and love, Reggie Cannon, Serginho Dest, Mark McKenzie, Matt Miazga, Tim Ream, Anthony Robinson, DeAndre Yedlin. Midfielders, Kellen Acosta, Tyler Adams, Sebastian Lletget, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Jackson Ewell. Forwards, Brendan Aronson, Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, Josh Sargent, Jordan Sibachu, and Tim Weah. So, I mean, lots of talent, lots of wonderful resumes, and at least on paper, looks like arguably the strongest national team that we've ever had, but that's just on paper. Glaring omissions right now, what I think a lot of people are going to be talking about is Daryl Dike not on this. We still haven't found out exactly what's going on. I'm sure there will be some sort of explanation as to why that is, because a lot of people are looking at him as that possible successor to Josie Altidore in a position that, while we're talking so confidently about around the field, up top right now, I think there's a real question as to who's going to be there. Mosse, first off, anything tickle your fancy there when you hear those names?
No, I want to hear the explanation on DK because I'm on the Rob Stone train that I think this young man has shown enough that he's now in the pole position to emerge as the starting center forward for the U.S. I do want to ask Simon a question about Berhalter, if I may. There was a story in The Athletic recently about Atlanta United, which mentioned in passing that Tata Martino wanted to coach the U.S. and was never contacted. And that got Twitter in a frenzy again. You know, there's this faction of people who thinks the U.S. sold itself short by hiring Greg Berhalter. The U.S. now has all this talent playing for top European clubs, and so they need a sexy foreign coach. And Berhalter is a little bit in over his head coaching this amount of talent. What do you make of all that? I happen to like Berhalter. I like tactics wonks, which he clearly is. But I know there are a lot of people that disagree with me. So what's your feelings on that?
I mean, to me, when in selecting Berhalter over a Tata, even though it sounded like Tata wasn't even part of the process, really, I think in Tata, the teams that fit well for a Tata Martino are the teams that are built for a short run. You have them for a 3-4 year period. You know what you're gunning for, and he's your guy to meld it, bring it all together. I think Berhalter is more of a long-term someone who's going to build long-term. So for them to concentrate on Greg Berhalter, sure, in the short run, you know, Tata Martino could have provided ideas and different ways of working that could have benefited the U.S. national team in the short run. There's no doubt that, who knows, he could have had success perhaps with the U.S. national team. But with Berhalter, you're building for the long term. You're building a program. You're connecting the youth national teams with the senior national teams, and you have someone who is building long term. I don't know that a Tata Martino would approach the job that way. So, you know, I think in Greg Berhalter, it was such an obvious choice in that he had proven his mettle in MLS. He showed he was, from a tactical standpoint, he had the credibility. He had the credibility among players in the U.S. national team pool. There was so much to the Greg Berhalter candidature that the fact that he ended up with the job is not scandalous in the least to me. You know, should they have taken Tata Martino maybe and gone down that road a little more to sure, but if you know who the person is and the right person for the job, why not? So I think it was the right choice at the time, and I think that's, you know, many of us at the time, I know we're thinking that it's like, you know, Greg Berhalter's going to get the job. He's the one who probably should get it next. Tata Martino was that other candidate, but I don't know that there were many others. I think Greg Berhalter stood out.
And the only other thing, just looking at this roster, which I'm still kind of processing because it came out just minutes before we started taping, is with the unfortunate injury to Aaron Long, there's now a question at the back who would start next to John Brooks. You've got guys like Matt Miazga, Mark McKenzie battling for it. Do you have any thoughts there on who you'd like to see?
Yeah, I know that the center back spots are the ones that really get people, you know, all excited and debating. But I think the talent there is strong. Chris Richards, Mark McKenzie, you know, Brooks. I think you have Miazga. You have enough talent there and enough proven talent that you just got to make sure you get the pairing right and you get the chemistry right between them. But I think there's more than enough depth. It stinks for Aaron Long because I thought there was so much that he brought to the position that others maybe don't. But you know, I think there's enough depth there, and you know, they'll get a chance. I'm interested to see Miazga, you know, maybe take another step. But look, I think that the Nations League roster we're seeing here, that's the European base, right? I think the reason, you know, the DKs and Zimmermans maybe of the world, it's because the Gold Cup is probably going to be heavy MLS given the way the windows are working. So, and DK, we know that once the loan's up, he's back with his MLS team. So, yeah, but I think center back, they're more than covered. I think the most interesting spot to me and the most sensitive part of the field for me for the US is the central midfield position. And that's where Jackson Ewell and Kellen Acosta are kind of battling. That's such an important part of any team, such an important role. And they are the ones who are going to, one of those two is going to win that spot. Or maybe, you know, you could play both of them there. But that to me is fascinating, how those two play either together or separately on the big stage against the Mexicos, you know, in games that matter. I think they're going to be so key to where this team goes and how much it can accomplish. All
right, a couple quick questions for you, Simon. Ready?
Sure.
Number one, does the U.S. men's national team qualify for the 22 World Cup?
Yes.
With ease?
Maybe not entirely, but they will get there comfortably.
Okay, get there comfortably. So now we're there. Come November 2022 in Qatar, whatever that group ends up being, and that first game happens. Let's say everybody is, remains healthy and everything like that. How many, if any, of the starting 11 that walk on that field that day are from Major League Soccer?
I don't know. Irrelevant.
It's not relevant. You don't think it's relevant?
No, not at all. Because some players, like the Steffens of the world, they were formed in Major League Soccer. So I don't know that distinction matters anymore. To be honest, how many players currently play in Major League Soccer or don't? These players, many of them are coming through Major League Soccer through the pipeline.
Yeah, but it also says. But it also says that if you don't, have a passport, or you don't have a connection, or you're not playing for a club that has that views its MLS team as a farm league or something like that, and you don't have that opportunity, then you're not going to have the opportunity, because if I look on the field, I don't see anybody like me on the field that's actually playing in MLS. And so the only way that I can play for the national team is to be overseas. I know that's simplistic, but it is. But I do think it matters. You don't think it matters, really?
Who's it going to matter to? The U.S. national team fan only cares about the players that are there. Like, it doesn't. No one's really sitting there thinking about.
I think it would matter to MLS. I think it would matter to MLS. I think it would matter to an MLS player who has aspirations to play on the national team.
But ultimately, all these players are tied in some way to MLS. Again, looking at the Steffens of the world, looking at Tyler Adams. So I think any way it plays out, it's good for U.S. soccer. It reflects well on Major League Soccer.
Okay, how many players? How many players are on the field?
Half the team is going to have touch points with Major League Soccer. Maybe
I don't want touch points. I want actually playing. When the roster comes out, the FIFA roster comes out, next to the name it says, I don't know, Real Salt Lake or
2 or 3.
What?
2 or 3.
Actually on the field, and that's starting 11.
Starting 11.
Interesting. Mosse, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where Simon's coming from. This is an issue, Alexi, that I know you like to hype up, and yet everything emanating from MLS is they don't seem bothered. If enough of the players came through MLS, they feel a sense of inclusion. Even guys like Weston McKennie, who didn't play in MLS, but the fact that they came up through an MLS academy seems enough for MLS to feel some sense of validation from that. So, it doesn't sound like this is going to be as big a talking point the next couple of years as you and sometimes me, to be fair, like to try to portray it.
Look, all I care about is that the team wins. I don't care where you come from, but I'm not saying that it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, I do think it matters. I think it matters to people. I think it matters to entities. But to your point, ultimately, winning a World Cup is winning a World Cup. Whoever's on the field, it really doesn't. That doesn't matter in that sense. So I get what you're saying. All right, let's quick, because we are in a week where one of the biggest games in our game is happening, and as I said earlier, it involves American players. On one side, you have Zach Steffen, who is it's not even arguable, he is the number 2 for what is arguable, but for a lot of people would argue, including myself, the best team in the world in Man City. He's the number 2 goalkeeper there. He's already won the league title and celebrated that, and now he gets an opportunity to be a Champions League winner, and he comes up against a Chelsea team that we know features Christian Pulisic at times as a starting role and times not in a starting role. We don't know how that's going to be. How do you see this one playing out, Simon?
If there's justice, Manchester City wins this. They are the best team in the world, but it's a one-off final. Thomas Tuchel, the tactician that he is, and the way that Chelsea play, I think they're going to be more than comfortable sitting back and trying to hit him on the counter. And by the way, Christian Pulisic, no-brainer for him to start, because that's give him the open field, let him run behind, put Timo Werner with him. Timo Werner, that's their game, and I think we saw it work out for them already twice before. I don't think it's coincidental that it's worked out for them twice before. I think Man City, one-off final, they should win the crown, putting the teams together. But Chelsea in a one-off game, they can take this.
If it's such a no-brainer to you that Christian Pulisic should be starting, why isn't he starting?
I think the type of games that Chelsea have had, we've seen when Chelsea have had to make the game, it's hard for them. It's hard. The spaces, they don't have that combination play. They need to run at teams. Man City bringing the game to them, as will happen on Saturday. Chelsea's going to have the opportunity to break out, and that's where Pulisic shines. This is a great opportunity for Pulisic to take that next step and become a real star. And we're going to be writing about that this week on sportingnews.com, about how this is a huge opportunity on a national stage. Look, I think he's a good player, well-respected, talented. This is now a star, a leap into stardom for him. He could be the difference and the reason why Chelsea win that game. And I think
why does it matter? Well, why do you care about him? Because he's American? Who cares?
No, but it'll be interesting in terms of the dynamic. I think we all know that in American sports, we need big stars. The bigger they are, the more relevant the sport. And
he's not the biggest star on the team, so why are you focusing in on him?
He's not the biggest star maybe for Chelsea fans, but he's wearing the 10. He's the best player in American soccer today. And if he gets a big final,
what does that matter?
We all need in any sport. There's always the best player. You always look at the focal point. Pulisic is going to be the focal point for the U.S. national team for the next 2 World Cup cycles. And so, if he has a great final and leads Chelsea to that triumph, which is a very realistic scenario that he can do that, it's going to be tremendous for him. He's wearing the 10 at Chelsea, potentially European champion, with the goals that can maybe get them there. It would be a tremendous story.
So if an American wins the Champions League for a team for Chelsea in this, it matters. But if the United States men's national team wins a World Cup and there's no MLS player, it doesn't matter.
No, because it's the tide rising, the rising tide lifting all boats. It's what it is. It reflects well on American side. The Pulisic playing well, and that's good for the whole U.S. national team player pool. The MLS player who is hoping to see their value rise as players in the world market, it's tremendous for them. It's tremendous. It's not a coincidence that when Pulisic, when these players are now, McKennie, are performing well, now we're seeing so many other players join European teams, and now so many are winning trophies. I think that was the other takeaway from the weekend. How many trophies that U.S. players have lifted in Europe. It's not a coincidence. I think they're helping to change the perception about the U.S. player. It's so important.
I love you, Simon. I love you, my friend. Welcome back. Welcome back, and congratulations on the new gig. And thank you for, in short notice, coming on the show and regaling us. And I wish you all the luck. And I look forward to reading and seeing everything that you are going to be doing as you try to continue to inform and entertain all of us out there in North America. As we said, we agree, we disagree, we debate, we do all that kind of stuff, but we are a unique animal when it comes to the North American soccer fan out there. You are one of them. We are all one of them. So thank you so much for coming on the State of the Union. Once again, promote anything you want.
Sportingnews.com. You're going to start seeing it. Keep that bookmarked. You're going to start seeing a lot coming from us over the next few weeks and months. So we're excited. We have big plans for the future.
Thank you, Simon Borg.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, David and I are going to scream and yell a little bit more about Champions League and some other things. Don't go away. All right, welcome back. That was fun to talk to Simon Borg. As I said, I got a lot of respect and love for that guy, and hope he does some good things, and I think he will. All right, Mosse, Champions League. It is upon us. Champions League final. You heard Simon talking about why it matters. Does Chelsea have a chance? I know a lot of people are talking about it since it's a one-off game and everything, and you heard Simon talk about how Man City it's in their DNA to attack, which is going to open up some spaces for Chelsea. Would you ever suggest to anybody putting their money on Chelsea this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. I slightly lean Manchester City, but I think it's going to be a very competitive game. It would not surprise me at all if Chelsea won. I do think they match up well with them. They've won the last two meetings, that FA Cup semifinal, and then that first Premier League game after they both qualified for the Champions League final. Now, I don't love the way Chelsea finished the season, and we'll get to that in a minute when we talk about the final round of the Premier League. But no, I see this as a very competitive game. I've compared it when you face a team from your country in a Champions League final, it's like facing a team from your conference in the Final Four. There's not that same intimidation factor because they're used to facing you all the time. So I think if City were facing a team from a different league with how impressive City have been all season, there'd be a greater intimidation factor with that opponent than there will be with Chelsea. I think Chelsea will take the field very confident and feeling that they have a good chance here. So I expect a terrific game.
Now, you mentioned, or we were talking about Tuchel, and I think that he's done an incredible job. And I think, as we've said time and time again, this isn't even his team yet. He's just made do with what he was handed and made it that much better. But, they backed into a Champions League spot for next year in terms of a top four, and we'll get to that in a second. They lost the cup, right? What was the score?
They lost to Leicester in the FA Cup final.
Yeah. So they lost the FA Cup final. And now, they're going up against a better opponent. Ultimately, when you look at what Chelsea has achieved this year and what Tuchel, more importantly, has done, what grade would you give him?
Oh, I'd give him
this
an A.
game. An A, really?
Yeah, I mean, he took over a team that was floundering under Frank Lampard. I know there's been a lot of debate about how much credit Frank Lampard deserves for what Chelsea have done. Did he set the table in any way by developing guys like Mason Mount? But I mean, Tuchel took over a team that, in my view, was going nowhere under Frank Lampard this season. And the fact that he got them to a Champions League final, only the third one they've ever been in their history, and finished in the top four. They were ninth when he took over. So I know they've sputtered here lately after an incredible feel-good few months where they were one of the best teams in Europe. But I don't think 3 or 4 bad games here at the end, even if they lose to City, I don't think it undoes the fact that he'll come out of the season looking pretty good.
Yeah. And I think the summer will be really interesting to see what he is given or what he wants ultimately to make some different changes. And I think there will be changes, comings and goings as it goes on. If Pep and Man City win this, do you see Pep here at the end of the year or at the beginning of next season, or is this a walk away moment, maybe another sabbatical? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I wanted to go next because this is a big legacy game for Pep. Yeah, I think even if they win, he stays. He seems very happy there. I don't think he's looking to go anywhere else right now. But yeah, look, Pep is always going to battle this sort of Phil Jackson thing of, he always coaches the best teams with amazing talent. But, people act like managers never screw up at these big clubs. We see it all the time so the fact that he's able to always maximize the talent he has and gets them to play this unbelievable football, I think he deserves credit for that. And yeah, if he wins a third Champions League title, he would join Bob Paisley, Carlo Ancelotti, and Zinedine Zidane as the only managers with 3 European Cups. He'd become just the 6th guy to win it with 2 different clubs, joining Ernst Happel, Ottmar Hitzfeld, Jose Mourinho, Jupp Heynckes, and Carlo Ancelotti. So he'd hit some impressive milestones here. He'd win one without Messi. So I do think it would elevate him even more. What do you think? Are you am I giving him too much credit?
Well, I just want to make sure I understand this because we are talking about the elites of the elites here, right? And so
right.
It's all relative. And we'll get, once again, we will get to the EPL and how that all finished out. But when you say that, Pep gets, often is talked about in the context of being given everything in terms of the money, in terms of the players, I still think that is a legitimate part of the equation. I'm not saying that it doesn't require skill and incredible skill to manage all of these, all these big egos and all of this talent and to get it going. But, again, it is a little apples and oranges when you are comparing what he is doing and what he has at his disposal. And he's not alone. There's others too, but what he has been given to be able to be this great coach. So I do think it's fair to include that in the conversation, right?
No, absolutely. There's a famous Samuel Eto'o quote, and Eto'o hates Pep and loves Mourinho. And he was asked once to compare Mourinho to Pep as managers, and he said, it's simple. One guy won the Champions League with Porto. The other guy couldn't win it with Bayern Munich. So it is true that some of these other managers we compare Pep to do have on their resume a great triumph with a lesser team that really sticks out. Oh my God, the fact that he was able to win that trophy with that club is amazing. Pep doesn't have something like that because of the clubs he's coached. They were all super talented.
Do you think that Pep, in any of the places that he's been, has actually, to use an Americanism, coached them up?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think Bayern Munich might be the toughest argument of the 3, but certainly with Barcelona and Manchester City, to me, those clubs played more unbelievable football under him than they played with any of the coaches that came directly before him, or I guess in City's case, we'll have to wait and see after him. But
right.
But you know what I mean? I do think he elevates He does make players better. He does elevate the overall quality of play. And frankly, when I think about Pep Guardiola, I think more about the quality of the football than I do the winning. I don't necessarily, a guy like Mourinho, the winning is the thing. That's his whole brand. With Pep, it's more the football, and the winning comes as a natural consequence of having these unbelievable players and getting them to play great football. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get what you're saying. All right, I like you think that this is Pep and City's to lose. I would I would not put my money on Chelsea. I'd put your money on Chelsea, but I would not put my money on Chelsea. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. Anything before we move on to Europa?
Trivia. There are 2 players involved in this game who have played in a Champions League final before. Can you tell me who they are?
Who have played in a no, who?
Thiago Silva, who played in last year's and captained PSG against Bayern, which Tuchel managed, by the way. Tuchel, the first manager to manage in consecutive Champions League finals with 2 different clubs. And
he could be the first manager to lose, right?
And then the other one will be Ilkay Gundogan, who not only played in, but scored for Dortmund against Bayern in a losing effort at Wembley in 2013, a Champions League final I covered for Fox. We were in London that week. It was so much fun. And so I remember that game well, and Gundogan scored in that one, and we'll see if he can score in this one.
You'd think there'd be more, given the elite nature of some of these clubs and some of these players.
By the way, I'm kind of smelling penalties here potentially. Keep in mind that the 2 previous Champions League finals Chelsea played in both went to penalties. The 2008 one, they lost in unbelievable circumstances to Manchester United when John Terry slipped. He had a chance to win it. And then 2012, luck was on their side. They beat Bayern in a shootout. The last final Chelsea and City were involved in, 2019 League Cup went to penalties. You may recall that was the game where Kepa refused to be substituted when Sadi tried to take him out. That whole incident. Chelsea played recently in the UEFA Super Cup against Liverpool. That went to penalties. So there's something about Chelsea in these finals and penalties. So wouldn't surprise me at all, which would then shift the focus to Ederson and Mendy. If Mendy is fit, there's a bit of an injury concern with him. So keep that.
Let me ask you something about, because you mentioned goalkeepers, and I think you mentioned this last week, and I think you stopped short, or we might have talked about it last week. I can't remember where I was talking about it, but when you talk about Zach Steffen, all right, I mean, look, it's wonderful. He has carved out a place, as we said, with the best team in the world, arguably, but he is a backup goalkeeper, and so it's not. I don't know how to phrase this. Does he, I think we talked about how it's really about Christian Pulisic, because he is actually going to be on the field. And unless something ridiculous happens, there's no way that Zach Steffen is going to be on the field. But that's the lot of a backup goalkeeper. But is there, when the book is written, is it ultimately going to be more value, and should there be much more value put on what Christian Pulisic has done relative to what Zach Steffen has done?
Yeah, that was the point I made last week, that I was hearing too much of, there's 2 Americans going head to head in this final. And I feel like Steffen, he's a backup. The U.S. has had great goalkeepers. They've had guys that are better than Steffen, who have been starters for big European clubs. So the Steffen part of the story, I don't view as that significant. Now, one guy who I think is rooting for Manchester City is Jovan Karofsky, because then he can cling to still being the only American outfield player to win the Champions League. So he would rather Steffen win it than Pulisic. I haven't spoken to Jovan about this, but knowing the way he is, I guarantee that's what he's thinking right now.
Well, I mean, the question really comes down to, when it comes to Zach Steffen, as the number 2 for Man City, obviously he has achieved a certain level of fame and talent and notoriety, and I think it's unquestionable that he is talented. But if he was to find a place to be the number 1, would he be able to find a place that in any conversation you would put as a potential to reach a UEFA Champions League final?
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I think he's a good but not great goalkeeper.
Right. And there's a lot of teams around the world that would love to have him as their number 1, but those teams wouldn't be in contention and wouldn't be put on the likes at the level of the likes of Man City or even Chelsea for that matter. And once again, this is I'm not I'm not dumping on Zach Steffen. I was just thinking about what you had said last week. And first off, he doesn't care what we have to say. And if he were to win a Champions League and beat Chelsea, whether he steps on the field or not, It's an incredible feat, and he should celebrate it, and I think he will celebrate it. So, all right, Europa. We got Villarreal and Manchester United. Who do you got on this one?
Well, yeah, so the Champions League final is in Porto. It was originally Istanbul, it was moved to Porto, and then the Europa League final is in, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Gdansk in Poland.
Gdansk.
Listen, I've said it all season, or at least since they dropped down. To me, Manchester United are a Champions League team that ended up in the Europa League. To me, they would not have looked out of place in the later knockout stages here of the Champions League. I view them as one of the best clubs in Europe, and they just kind of screwed up in that group stage. They landed in a group with PSG and Leipzig, and so there wasn't a lot of margin for error, and a couple of bounces didn't go their way, and lo and behold, they're in the Europa League. And so to me, they've been the class of this competition since they've entered it. Villarreal are a good team, but they're a good Europa League team. I don't see them on the level of Manchester United. Villarreal have some guys. They have this center back, Pau Torres, who everybody loves, and including Manchester United have been linked to him. Dani Parejo, a midfielder I love. Moreno has had an incredible season, whether it's Alcácer or Baca who starts up front. Either guy has tremendous pedigree. And of course, they have a manager in Unai Emery who won this 3 times with Sevilla and got to the final with Arsenal. So I don't want to completely discount them, but I view Manchester United as solid favorites here, even though they might be without Harry Maguire, which is a big miss, but still there's too much quality there. I favor United.
Agreed. All right, let's take a whip around.
By the way, that would be if City and United both win. That would be City of Manchester winning both those competitions, which is rare, but has happened. In 2018, Real Madrid won the Champions League. Atletico Madrid won the Europa League. Back in '94, AC Milan won the Champions League. Inter Milan won the UEFA Cup. So it has happened before, but it would be a nice little feather in the cap of the City of Manchester, which I know fancies itself the second biggest city in England behind London.
It would be, but I mean, if you were walking down the street and the Man City fan is celebrating the Champions League title, and then the Manchester United fans walking the other way celebrating the Europa League, I don't think they're created equal. But anyway, all right. We mentioned it when it comes to the leagues that were decided. A lot of them came down in terms of the jockeying for position, for Champions League spots, and for the title spots here. So let's go right to England, where after all is said and done, and all the hoopla and all the shouting, what it really comes down, meritocracy and parity, it all comes down to the fact that the people that spent the most money to hedge their bets and to ensure themselves that they would be in this position find themselves in this position. Right, Mosse?
That's exactly where I was going. All this talk about also the pandemic and what a wacky season and West Ham and Leicester, and in the end ends up being City, United, Liverpool, Chelsea in the top 4, which I believe is the top 4 you predicted, my friend, way back in the beginning of the campaign. So hats off to you. I had Spurs in my top 4, so I got that one spectacularly wrong. But I will say Chelsea flirted with disaster here. We talked last week about there was a scenario where they could lose the FA Cup final, drop out of top 4, and lose the Champions League final, and end up trophyless and out of the Champions League. And they certainly did their part this past weekend for that to happen, losing away to Aston Villa. With 15 minutes left in all the games, they were out. And then Leicester imploded at home against Tottenham, a game they were winning 2-1. They let Spurs score 3 and ended up losing 4-2. Gareth Bale got a couple late. And so for the second season in a row, it's brutal because Leicester spent I saw a graphic. They spent more days in the top 4 than any other club this season, and they end up dropping out at the end. The similar thing happened last season. So it's been an incredible couple of years here for Leicester. They have an FA Cup title to show for it, but the one thing they don't have is a Champions League berth. They've come close, but
it's strange because I was listening to Brendan Rodgers after the game talk about how proud he was. That this was a tough pill to swallow, but how proud he was. And he framed it actually very, very well in that this is a team that we have come to now associate with being elite and fighting for that top 4. And that's not necessarily who they are. And so they continue to kind of punch above their weight. And so in a certain sense, we're being unfair with our disappointment that they aren't there. But you know what? If you are successful, you will raise expectations regardless of what the reality is. And to do it in the way that they did, okay? I mean, to kind of have it in the palm of your hand and to piss it away, even though you're pissing it away to others that spend more money and are bigger clubs and certainly have a longer history. I think that's probably, it makes it hurt that much more. But I think we talked about it before. Leicester are no longer this mid-level, middling type of team. And is it fair for us to expect so much from Leicester now on a consistent basis?
No, your point is well taken. They're victims of their own success. Arlo White said this on Twitter. He said not long ago, Leicester were in League One, I think he said, or perhaps even lower than that. And now we're criticizing them for throwing away a top 4 spot. That speaks to how far they've come. Absolutely. So you can take that view of it as well. Yes.
All right, big losers on the year. I wouldn't put Leicester as a loser, but big losers on the year yet again. Arsenal and probably Everton. I would say, right?
Yeah, let's touch on Everton for a moment because, boy, all the fuss early on this season. Ancelotti, they finally turned the corner there. They're going to compete for top 4, at the very least Europa League, and they finished 10th. They played some dreadful football down the stretch, and it all culminates with a 5-0 loss to Manchester City. So yeah, I mean, just absolutely, they're one of my losers for the season because, this was supposed to be a turn the corner type of campaign. It ended up more of the same for them.
Big winners, Leeds finishing 9th, I would think.
Absolutely.
And Manchester United, given everything that's happened, I mean, I know they're expected to do that, but still that, the perception of Manchester United was they were still, trying to get back. They ended up still not sacking Ole and kind of going through all that and all the turmoil off the field. Despite their American ownership, they were able to finish second.
And we haven't talked about this, but UEFA have created a third club competition for next season. So that's where Spurs are headed. Not the Champions League, not the Europa League. They did qualify for the Europa Conference League.
So that's worse than the NIT, right?
So, yeah, there was a debate among Arsenal fans about whether they even wanted to get in that. Technically, it would have kept their streak of consecutive seasons in Europe going, but nobody knows what to make of this competition just yet. So I don't know if that's a good thing.
We often judge and we talk so much about winning silverware and holding up trophies. I mean, if you just keep creating opportunities to give a trophy out, then you'll have those moments eventually if you have enough of them. All right, should we move on to Spain?
Well, just one last thing. I mentioned City thumping Everton 5-0. Sergio Aguero came off the bench, got 2 goals in that one, both assisted by Fernandinho, by the way. And Sergio Aguero on his way out of the club. It's the worst kept secret. He's going to sign with Barcelona. So he finishes his last Premier League match in style. Now, the ultimate storybook ending would, of course, be if he gets on the field and scores against Chelsea in the Champions League final. De Bruyne, by the way, also scored a fantastic goal in this game. And I forgot to mention this when we're talking Champions League final. That's another storyline here because that's a guy who passed through Chelsea when he was young. Mourinho discarded him. Chelsea fans have had to sit there the last few years and watch him become what he's become. And then imagine if he were to have a great game and score in the Champions League final against them. But he did score a great goal this past weekend. City finish off this campaign in style, 5-0. They are the champs, 3rd time in 4 years. So hats off to them.
All right, let's go to Spain and let's get it over with here, okay? Luis Aguilar, please unmute yourself. Show us your face. Congratulations. Congratulations. You knew it all along, all right? This was decided a long time ago, right?
I called this and I called Parasite, and I just want to thank Mosse for this because 2 years ago, Mosse was big on Atletico Madrid when they signed João Felix, and I hopped on that bandwagon because Mosse was so high on them, and I'm glad I did because now I'm like sitting with the title.
Do you think your coach is going to be back?
I think so.
Okay.
I think he's back. They'll need to figure out Champions League stuff, but I think he's back. I think he's got enough goodwill to do it.
Mosse, thoughts on this title? I mean, congratulations to you, Luis. And look, we don't want the same people doing it over and over again. So this is something special. First time since 2000. What was it? I don't even know. What
14?
14? Oh my goodness. So that's awesome. Congratulations to Atletico Madrid, the way that they did it. And it's fun to see. It's fun to see when somebody else steps up that we don't expect.
Well, first off, he claims he jumped on this bandwagon 2 years ago. I have not heard about this Atletico Madrid fandom until like 2 weeks ago. And even in the last couple of weeks, he's been hedging his bets a little bit. He did have a Barcelona jersey with him and told us that he was, look at that, he still has it. Just in case this La Liga race went a different way, he could still try to claim victory. So this is absolutely shameless. But listen, if nothing else, it got you some airtime here. We've run this joke into the ground, but Congratulations, I suppose.
My sister gave me that jersey, but thank you for having me on.
Is there? I mean, look, there were so many scenes, after the game, and Simeone and his kids, and all the different things, and the crying. But the Suarez story, and I mean, it's pretty awesome. And he didn't hide the fact that he had a chip on his shoulder, and he talked about it even after the game, how he felt that Barcelona didn't believe him anymore, and you can be careful the ammunition that you give to good players, great players, especially goal scorers. And so it was fun, and I was happy to see how much it meant to him. And this is a guy who's won everything. He's been there and done that, and yet I think that this will be something very, very special for him, as it should be.
No, absolutely. So just to get people caught up with and see what happened this last weekend. So Atletico clinched the title with a 2-1 away win over Valladolid. Real Madrid did their part. They beat Villarreal 2-1. So Atletico needed every one of those 3 points that they got. They actually trailed 1-0, and then Correa got the equalizer, and Suarez got the game winner. So Ronaldo owned Valladolid go down, replaced in La Liga by Stu Holden owned Mallorca, which is a bitter pill to swallow for me.
Wow.
But on the Atletico front, my big overarching takeaway is this. The fact that Barcelona handed Luis Suarez over to Atletico the way they did. And also, don't forget, Real Madrid sold Marcos Llorente to Atletico Madrid, who was arguably Atletico's second best player in this La Liga, or attacking player. They're guys like Oblak and stuff, obviously deserve tremendous amount of credit as well. But from an attacking standpoint, you've got Suarez, and then I would put Marcos Llorente right behind him, had 12 goals, 11 assists in La Liga this season. And the fact that Barcelona and Real Madrid handed those two players over to Atletico shows that deep down, they still didn't respect Atletico as a genuine rival, because they would have never handed players of that caliber to each other. And also they would have been leery about handing them over to another top European club where they viewed as a competitor in the Champions League. But there's something about Atletico where they didn't still totally take him seriously as a peer on equal footing, where they felt comfortable unloading those players to them, and it came back to bite them. So I hope Real Madrid and Barcelona learned their lesson.
But why should they? Why should they take them seriously, given the history?
It is their second La Liga title, as you mentioned, since 2014. To me, they've made this a genuine big three in Spain. By the way, that's the same number Real Madrid have won over that span.
But he's not just going to go to some little rinky-dink team or some team that's struggling. He's still Luis Suarez, so you can only if you're gonna move him, and there's only certain places that he wants to go, or you can move him. I don't think. I mean, like I think that's a little. I know I'm here for the narrative. I love it. It's a fun thing to talk about. But moving players on that you don't feel, for whatever reason, it could be you just want to you recognize that it's going the opposite way, and you want to maximize value or whatever. And I know this was a free transfer, or you just said, you've served us well, and we're moving in a new direction, either in the short term or the long term. This is the right thing to happen. That he comes back and bites you in the ass in the way that he did. Yeah, you're going to take some hits, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was the wrong thing to do.
I did see this devastating graphic showing a tail to tape of Suarez's La Liga numbers this season, 21 goals, and Martin Braithwaite, which is a little bit unfair, but right? That's the striker who, quote unquote, replaced Suarez and got 2 goals this season for Barcelona.
Yeah, so maybe it was the wrong thing to do.
and like I mentioned earlier, Barcelona are apparently going to sign Sergio Aguero, which to me, in addition to appeasing Messi because that's his buddy, is also an effort to sort of fill that void. They're hoping that Aguero can maybe be the Suarez, of what Suarez was.
So do you think that there's any way now that Messi goes? I mean, he's staying if his buddy's coming, right?
Yeah, I think all signs point to Messi staying.
All right. Well, congratulations, Atletico Madrid. All right, let's go over to France, shall we? Where once again we have somebody new. And by the way, when it comes to an American, congratulations to Timothy Weah, first American champion of Ligue 1.
Yeah, this is remarkable. I mean, the fact that somebody other than...
Is it remarkable? Is it?
Although I will say it happened fairly recently, 2017. So in 2 of the last 5 seasons, for as much as we bag on this league for how predictable it is, and PSG are so above everybody else. Twice in the last 5 seasons, somebody other than PSG won it. Monaco, you might recall that incredible team in 2017 with Mbappe and Bernardo Silva and Thomas Lemar and Bakayoko and Fabinho and Mendy and Sidibe. And by the way, there is a link here in these 2 triumphs. There's a Portuguese sporting director named Luis Campos, who was more or less the architect of these 2 clubs that knocked PSG off their perch. This is a guy with a great reputation. Mourinho loves him. He hired him as a scout and tactical analyst when he was at Real Madrid, and then he went from there to Monaco. Now, he does have this habit of leaving right before he left Monaco right before they won the league, and then he left Lille mid-season. So he's like the Buck Showalter of sporting directors. He doesn't stick around to really enjoy the fruits of his labor, but nevertheless, he signed a lot of those Monaco players I mentioned that won that title in 2017, and then he expertly put together this Lille side with this blend of youth and experience. You've got veterans like Joseph Fonchi and Burak Yilmaz, youngsters like Jonathan David, this Botman, who everybody loves, the center back, Soumahe in the midfield, Renato Sanchez had this rejuvenation. So, hats off to Lille. Although I will say one thing, Monaco, the season they won it, racked up 95 points. So they hung a big number there that PSG wasn't able to match. Lille finished with 83, which is pretty low to win the title with that many points. So it does speak to how much PSG screwed up this season. It got off to a weird start for them because they had to start playing Liga right after losing that Champions League final to Bayern. They had a COVID outbreak early on because all the players went to Ibiza and contracted COVID. And so they got off to a bad start, and this season never really settled down for them. And then they get rid of Tuchel. They're bringing Pochettino, and he had to kind of get his bearings. And there was never a moment where you felt like, oh, PSG have really settled in this Liga campaign and got everybody together and now going to rip off a bunch of victories. If you're looking for a couple of determinant moments here, Lille in early April went to the Parc des Princes and beat PSG 1-0 on the top of the table clash. Neymar got sent off in that one. And then they had this amazing comeback away to Lyon, a game they trailed 2-0. They came back and won 3-2. So those were the moments that PSG will look back on with some regret. And so they end up finishing second. They held up their end this weekend, to be fair. They beat Brest, but Lille beat Angers as well to clinch the title. So
you're not saying there's an asterisk attached to this win?
No, I'm just saying that PSG deserve a lot of criticism here. Maybe
that's where we put the asterisk. We'll put the asterisk on PSG for future generations when they are talking about this, to not forget to heap more scorn on PSG for what they ultimately didn't do in this season. Well, congratulations to Lille. We love to mix it up. What do you got?
And by the way, to be fair, I'm the biggest Bielsa groupie, but Bielsa was Lille's coach at the start of the 17-18 campaign. And this is frankly the biggest blemish on Bielsa's whole record. He did an awful job there, was sacked mid-season, and they brought in the guy that's in charge now, Christophe Galtier, and he managed to keep them up. They almost got relegated that season. And then they really rolled up their sleeves and got to work from then on and built up this team that culminated with this Ligue 1 triumph. They've been experts at selling players the last couple of summers. They sold Nicolas Pepe to Arsenal for a lot of money, then Victor Osimhen to Napoli last summer, and yet they're always able to replace him with somebody good that costs much less. And so they haven't missed a beat here. They've been a very good team for the last couple of years, and so it culminates with this Ligue 1 triumph, which is a tremendous achievement.
All right, andiamo. Let's go to Italia. All right, ready? Serie A. All right. All right, Juventus, they're in. They qualify for Champions League. AC Milan qualifies for Champions League for the first time, by the way, since 2013. So Zlatan and company, congratulations to them. We'll see what they look like. Juventus, it was touch and go, and obviously Juventus lost Serie A a while ago, and we talked about that. Ronaldo, top scorer in Serie A, the first player to be top scorer in Serie A, Premier League, and La Liga. I mean, the man just scores goals, although he's not good enough, evidently, to get a starting position in the final game of the year. What'd you make of this last round here in Serie A, when the music stopped and where all the chairs were?
Well, I don't know if you recall, but last week when we set this up, I said look, the given here is that Napoli are going to beat Verona. So they're going to be in it. It's all going to come down to AC Milan and Juventus. So that's the kind of expert analysis you can expect every week on the State of the Union podcast, because it was in fact Napoli who threw this away. They were winning 1-0 in the second half. So there was a period of about 10 minutes there in the second half of the games where Juventus were out of the Champions League. And then Verona is who threw Juventus a lifeline. To be fair, Juventus did a good job taking care of their business. They jumped on Bologna early and cruised to an easy victory, but they still needed help, and they got it. I thought if they were going to get help, it would be from Atalanta against AC Milan, which was not to be. Milan won their game, but it was in fact Verona who scored that equalizer in the second half. Napoli finishes 1-1, and so Juventus leapfrogged them. So yeah, this is big sigh of relief for Juventus. I mean, this has been a terrible season, but it would have been catastrophic if they finished outside the top four. So they will be in the Champions League next season. Pirlo was already trying to make a case for himself after, hey, listen, we got in the top four. We won a couple of trophies. Wasn't so bad. Come on, I want to stay. We'll see. We'll see what this means for Ronaldo's future. I mean, you gave all those great stats. He was magnificent, but I don't know what the deal was this weekend. From what I read, he was too tired to play in the most important game of the campaign. There's got to be more.
There's a story behind this, all right, that will at some point come out. But I mean, look, if for the neutral out there, whether you're a Serie A fan or whether you're a Champions League fan, having Inter, Milan, Juventus, and Atalanta in Champions League, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And if Juventus had not been in Champions League, that would have been problematic for the players that they have, for the potential players that they are going to have. I want to see Weston McKennie playing in Champions League. I want to see Cristiano playing for Juventus in Champions League. So ultimately, again, in another situation where you spend a lot of money, and even if it happens on the last day, you find yourself in the position that you were expecting. Big losers. I mean, you mentioned Napoli kind of shooting themselves in the foot and falling out, but who else would you look at?
Can I make a larger point about who the biggest loser
Oh,
is?
yeah. I mean, I just wanted a loser. Now, if you want to make the biggest loser, absolutely.
And look, I have a lot of affection for this league, but I'm sorry, it's the Bundesliga, because they now stick out like a sore thumb. As you mentioned, we had a different winner in Italy, finally, Inter, and the fact that Juventus almost fell out of the top four really sort of enhances the notion of competitiveness of that league. We have Atletico Madrid winning La Liga. We have Lille winning Ligue 1. Like I said, the second time in 5 seasons that somebody other than PSG wins that league. So when people talk about now top heaviness and predictability, the bullseye is now squarely on the Bundesliga, because it showed that Bayern's dominance there is even pandemic proof. No matter how wacky this season was, nothing could stop them from cruising to another title, 9 in a row. So
the people run the show there. They're the owners, 50+1, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to change it, go ahead and change it.
I mean, the shame of it is there's so much to like about that league. We covered it for 5 years. The football is exciting, lots of goals,
stadiums,
tremendous
environments.
Not this season, but normally tremendous. It's a breeding ground for young stars. Yep. So I'm not saying I need a title race to extract enjoyment from that league, but it would be nice to have all those things I just mentioned and more competitiveness at the top too. And so I know the Derek Rays and Kevin Hatchards get annoyed when people bring this up. I know Keith brought it up, Costigan on Twitter, and they jumped down his throat over it. But I'm sorry, it is an issue. The fact that Bayern keep winning this league every year, especially when you see that some of these other leagues are starting to see some change at the top.
Yeah, they're starting to see some change at the top, but there's still a have and have nots. I mean,
Absolutely,
it's not, like I said, it's not a meritocracy. This is not, a situation where you have incredible, opportunity for everybody. This isn't a situation where any of these leagues where you get up and before the first whistle is blown on the first game, you say, my team has a chance of winning the title this year. That doesn't exist in a lot of these leagues. But to your point, if you are going to compete internationally, if you become predictable and therefore in that predictability you become boring, that is a problem. It's a problem for the individual teams, and it's a problem for your league that you are trying to sell globally, like the Bundesliga is, like all of these leagues are doing. So when it comes to Serie A, when it comes to Ligue 1, maybe more importantly when it comes to Ligue 1, because they are always kind of a notch below everybody else. And if they're trying to sell it, this is a good thing to sell that. It's not just all about PSG. And England doesn't have to worry about it because they're still the the most popular league in the world. But change the rules, change the regulations. I mean, what you got to do is either bring everybody else up or bring the one. It really ends up being the one, maybe the 1.5 if you include Dortmund. Bring them down to make it more competitive and to foster that manufactured parity and that competitive balance. Okay, Mosse, anything else then from over there?
That is it. All
right, so all sorts of stuff. We start our summer when it comes to Europe with all of the international games that are going on and all of the tournaments that are going on, including over there Euros, and then obviously Copa America, which we'll be televising over here, Gold Cup, where we will see a lot of these players on a lot of these teams throughout the summer. They'll have, we talk so much about the amount of games that the players play and the time off that they have or the time off that they don't have. Some of them will go straight into national team camps. Some of them will go straight into a vacation and then get right back at it when it comes to August. And it seems that it's less and less time off and less time for these players to regenerate, and not just physically, but mentally. But the new seasons will be upon us before we know it. But there's a lot of soccer between now and then, whether it's the domestic leagues that continue to go and run through the summer, like MLS and WSL and USL and all of the other leagues out there, and then all of the tournaments that are going on. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, yeah, it's time for Ask Alexi. Oh, yes. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. And if you've been listening for the last couple of weeks, you will know that we have added an element here in the form of audio, a hotline, if you will, 657-549-2297. You call up that hotline and you leave us a question, a comment, a concern out there, and we pick a few of them each week. And we're going to start it off with one that's actually going to give us a little recommendation as to how we should run this segment of the State of the Union pod. So we're going to go off the bat here to Alex from Connecticut. Let's see what Alex has to say.
Hey, this is Alex from Connecticut. This is a question. Why is the Ask Alexi section not 6 questions instead of 3? I think it's a fun segment. There should be more questions than just 3. Also, Mosse, give me just 1. That's it.
All right, Alex. All right. I hear you. You want more Ask Alexi, and you want us to increase it to 6. All right, we'll try to do that here in that segment. We will add a couple here. And I love the fact that you love when Mosse says, "That's it." Evidently, that's becoming a catchphrase, Mosse. So we got that going for us. All right. Well, that was your comment and your suggestion, and we're going to do that. And then we're going to go to, okay, Mosse, I'm going to give you some work to do here. Or actually, somebody's going to give you some work to do here. I think Alejandro has a request for you that is right up your alley. Let's see what Alejandro has to say.
Hey, my name's Alejandro from Las Vegas. Big fan of the show. Not too big of a fan of Alexi, but I'm being honest, I listen to the show because of David Mosse. So hey, Alexi and Dave, this question's for you. I would like to know what your ideal Brazil squad would be. So 11 players from any time. What would be your ideal 11?
All right. Well, you heard Alejandro from Vegas there, Mosse. He wants your Brazil all-time best 11. Is this even possible for a Brazilian like you to do? I mean, it must be difficult for you, but I have faith that you can come up with this.
Now, do I have to pretend like this is the first time I'm hearing this question?
No, I gave you a heads up, but just because I tell you that this is a possibility doesn't mean you're actually going to do the work.
Well, the reason I say that is because I want to bring my dad into this, because I had a conversation with him this morning and we came up with the team.
Wow. Together. Okay. Well, I apologize then. I didn't think you were going to go above and beyond.
If people disagree with my selections, I'm tarring him as well. At least I'm bringing him into.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay. Yes. All right. Go ahead.
So a couple things. We determined that we weren't going to include any active players. So there are guys like Neymar and Thiago Silva and Dani Alves and Casemiro, even who, if Brazil were to, let's say, win the 2022 World Cup with them as prominent figures, and you combine that with everything else they've accomplished, they could potentially work their way into this team. But these are all retired players. And the one criteria I came up with was you have to have won a World Cup to get on this team, which
interesting.
Eliminates that whole 82 generation, which everybody loves, the Zicos and Socrates and Falcones. So nobody got into it from that team.
Can I ask you one question before you start this? Is there anybody playing right now from a Brazilian standpoint other than Neymar that would even have a chance at this 11?
Well, it's funny. When you make these all-time teams, there's a question about how functional are you trying to make the team? Are you trying to keep the positions realistic? And if so, then you would need to have a holding midfielder per se.
I don't care about that. No,
and so my dad said in that scenario, somebody like a Casemiro with all the Champions League titles with Real Madrid. And like I said, if you were to win a World Cup with Brazil, if you're looking for that sort of pivot defensive player in the midfield. But for an all-time team, I decided to take some liberties there. So I have two central midfielders who are both
You're going to be running and gunning. You're just going to try to outscore your opponents. I get it.
But I didn't go crazy with it, because that's one thing that bothers me when people do these all-time teams and they throw like 6 forwards in there and just the positions are ridiculous. I tried to keep it at least some semblance of plausibility. Like the team I'm about to say could play a game and it wouldn't be like completely preposterous.
All right, go for it.
Here's what we came up with. The goalkeeper is Jumar, who was the starting goalkeeper on the 58 and 62 World Cup winning teams. The right back is Carlos Alberto, captain of the 1970 team. Left back is a guy by the name of Nilton Santos, who was on the 58 and 62 winning teams, nicknamed the Encyclopedia of Soccer in Brazil. Then here's where it got interesting. Center backs, we concluded that this is a position where Brazil has really improved in recent decades. My dad even said, my God, some of the center backs we've had in the last, Thiago Silva and Aldair and Lucio and guys like that. Boy, if we had guys like that when I was a kid, we never would have lost a game, because back then Brazil was all about attack and not as good defensively. I know that's considered a bit of a cliche, but so I went with two relatively recent guys. Lucio and Aldair are my center back pairing, with the caveat that I love Thiago Silva. So if he were to win the World Cup, next year, he could work his way into a future all-time Brazil 11. Then in the midfield, the two central midfielders, and here's where I took some liberties, which my dad made sure to point this out to me. I'm going with Gigi and Gerson. Gigi was chosen the best player in the 1958 World Cup and then won it again in 1962. Gerson was the brains of the 1970 team, won that World Cup. And then here's your front four. Pelé as the 10, needs no explanation. Garrincha on the right wing, Ronaldinho on the left wing, and Ronaldo Fenomeno as the center forward.
Not too
with
shabby.
His 15 World Cup
too
goals.
Shabby. So who did it kill, either you or your father, to leave out?
Well, obviously Brazil has had a plethora of great attacking players. So you end up with these. It had to be either Ronaldo or Romario as a center forward, Pelé or Zico as the 10. On that left wing, Ronaldinho could have been somebody like Rivellino, who played in that position in the 1970 World Cup. Garrincha or Jairzinho on the right. So, I mean, there's just, as you know, with Brazil, there's no way to do this, but by having this criteria that you have to have won a World Cup, it knocked out, for example, a player like Falcão, who would have definitely had a claim to one of those two central midfielder positions. So, it's right back too is also a tough position with Carlos. I went with Carlos Alberto, but you got Cafu and Jaume Santos and Dani Alves. And so it's not easy.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that question there, Alejandro. And by the way, Alejandro was not the only person that made a point of telling me that he's telling us that he's not a fan of me and he's much more a fan of Mosse. There was a lot of that. I understand that. Listen, I could do a whole segment on how important Mosse is and how much I appreciate and respect Mosse. Okay. But you also don't need to call and tell me how horrible I am relative to Mosse. I get it. I understand it. I mean, I am standing on the shoulders of greatness here. I mean, he even wanted to, there were people that wanted to call it different things, like this guy. All right, so let's listen to. Here we go. Brian Wildy. Let's see what Brian Wildy has to say.
Hey, Mosse and Alexi, this is Brian Wildy from Wichita, Kansas, and I got two questions for you. Number one, can you rename the show David Mosse's State of the Union podcast for 1 week? You know, like get his cartoon face with the headband on it? Just give the people what they want, right? But really, number two, I'm interested in what goes into covering like a ton of soccer for you guys, especially when it comes to like small market teams, which again, I happen to be from Kansas. I'm a big fan of Sporting. And of all the shows that I listen to, like Sporting doesn't get brought up very much, which I understand, but could it be that my team just isn't very interesting or very good? Little lead you in that question there. But anyway, Alexi, love the work you've done for soccer, and the show is great, guys. Keep it up. Thanks. Bye.
All right, Brian, I get it. You like David Mosse. You want to rename the show, David Mosse, the State of the Union with David Mosse. All right, so for this week, it's called State of the Union with David Mosse. I get it. To your question, though, what goes into covering tons of soccer and your small market team over there in Sporting? Look, it is impossible, next to impossible, I think, to adequately cover all of the soccer that happens in the world. Someone like David Mosse and the savant that he is gets as close as you are possibly going to get. And I think even he would readily admit that there's a lot of soccer that goes on out there that doesn't, that's not on his radar and doesn't rise to the level of something that he deems worthy, just because he only has so much bandwidth out there, and he's doing so much for all the different soccer parts of his job that he does with Fox and everything else. So you do have to have kind of a efficient way of cutting through the clutter and getting to the big stories out there and having a sufficient understanding. Now, if you are just covering one league, or even covering one team, then your focus is directed in that direction. But I think I've told the story of when Chris Collinsworth, one of the legends in broadcasting out there in terms of American football, when he comes to the end of his job, he's got months and months off before the NFL kicks in, and his job is covering one league and one set of players in the NFL. Our job is to have an understanding of what's going on all over the world. And I don't claim to be an expert in any of it, but I do have an understanding, and I try my best to follow everything. But I think it's next to impossible. And whether your stream on social media, Twitter over there is keeping you informed, the amount of articles that you read, the podcasts that you listen to, all of that kind of stuff is done in an effort to keep you up to date. When you or anybody in our business goes away on vacation, it's an attempt to recharge and to get away and to come back stronger. You inevitably will miss stuff. You can get back up to speed pretty quickly. But when it comes to picking and choosing, you have to be selective and you have to prioritize different things, even within a league, let's say. And I'm not necessarily talking about Sporting Kansas City or anything, because actually Sporting rates well on television. It has a good story to tell, and so good narrative. And so, but yes, the size of your fan base, the size of your location, and how relevant you are to the viewer, especially when you're doing something from a national broadcast perspective, all of that plays into what's going on. And we on this podcast, we skip around and we try to give everybody their due, and sometimes we get a little bit into the weeds, but we don't want to do that, and we have made a point of not doing that too much. And I know sometimes we veer off into different directions, but that you are a small, quote unquote, small market team doesn't necessarily preclude you from coming on our radar or being the focus of things that we do. There's wonderful stories both on and off the field. You are relevant as are others. And yes, there are some that are less relevant than others. And you have to have kind of a hierarchy out there, because you will just lose yourself, and you will, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much time you spend, it will be impossible for you to keep track and be up to date on everything that's going in terms of the numbers of teams, the numbers of leagues, the numbers of players, the different divisions of leagues that go out there, men's, women's, all that kind of stuff. So You do the best that you possibly can. If there are experts and people that are laser focused on certain things, you try to talk to them. And certainly let them do what they're doing. And if, for example, we have Copa America coming up, it's about doing the work, and it's about going back and watching games and talking to different people and understanding the storylines involved and having some perspective and understanding the layers and the nuance that's going on to it. But there's no way that you are going to be able to go down to the weeds, if you will, of every single team and every single player out there. Good question there from Brian over there in Wichita, Kansas. So be loud and be proud, and know that, yes, you do make it on our radar, whether it's sporting or anything else over there going on in Kansas. All right, let's go to let's go Fernando. Fernando's got a question, I think, about something we were talking about earlier in the pod.
Hi, Alexi and Mosse. My name is Fernando, and I was interested to know your opinion on what if MLS and Liga MX joined the Copa Libertadores, and how would that benefit them?
All right, Fernando, that's interesting. So what if MLS and Liga MX were involved in Copa Libertadores? Mosse, you want to start this one off?
Sure, because this is a hot topic in Mexico right now. Mexican clubs took part in the Libertadores from 1998 to 2016 and were very competitive, never won it, but 3 different Mexican clubs reached the final. Cruz Azul in 2001, lost to Boca. Chivas in 2010, lost to Internacional. And Tigres in 2015 lost to River Plate. And then the Copa Libertadores went through this massive restructuring. It became this full calendar competition, and just logistically, the Mexican clubs felt like they couldn't make it work, and so they dropped out. But it's something that the Mexican public is very upset about. They'd like them to get back in there because they thought it was tremendously beneficial to them and exciting. And by the way, I think CONMEBOL would love to have the Mexican clubs back because of the TV audience they bring in and sponsors and all that. And so there's a lot of talk that Mexican clubs are going to get back in there. And yeah, I'd love to see MLS teams compete in it as well. I think it'd be a great experience for them, would help make them better. Imagine LAFC going to a packed Bombonera to play Boca Juniors, how interesting that would be. Oh,
I love it. I love it. The logistics of it could be difficult, but I would love to see it for the reasons that you stated. And because the more that Major League Soccer teams are able to challenge themselves and challenge others in terms of the thinking and the perception out there, the more it'll change. And, I don't think that's happening anytime soon, but I would love to see some of the stuff that we're talking about here. All right, let's get a couple of questions in the old, I guess, traditional form out there from people on the old Twitter machine. What do you got, Mosse?
James Curran, sincere question that you may have been asked repeatedly. Your thoughts on synthetic turf and MLS? I despise it. I'd prefer uniformity. Have a good evening.
Well, I appreciate you telling me to have a good evening. That's kind of nice. Okay, so the synthetic situation right now, we're even seeing teams like Charlotte, for example, that are coming into the league and are putting synthetic surface in their stadium. So there are going to be more teams. We know that up in Seattle and in Portland that they play on the synthetic surface. Now, it's a very different surface that the players play on now relative to what I grew up with. I grew up with AstroTurf, basically green carpet over concrete, and you would slide on it and you'd get those raspberries, and you would be warned that if the paint from the AstroTurf got into your bloodstream, that your lymph glands would swell up and all that kind of stuff. So who knows what kind of damage we were doing out there, both internally and externally. The technology has progressed. It's night and day now in terms of what we see. Sure, you want grass, but sometimes it's not feasible. And there is a whole generation now that has grown up with turf, synthetic surfaces, as part of their soccer training and upbringing. It's not that they don't like playing on grass. It's just that they don't look at it as horrible, I guess, as my generation and other generations do. I think going forward, I just tweeted out a story earlier today about a new technology that is coming into play where they are using cork now, because it does play different. The ball sits up different. The ball rolls differently. You are affected physically differently than when you play on grass. And so the closer we can get to grass, the better off it is going to be from a soccer perspective, because the game is fundamentally changed by these synthetic surfaces that we have. But, as we've said before, the question now is, would you rather play on a crappy grass field or a pristine, latest technology turf and synthetic field? And I think there's a lot of soccer players, especially this generation, that want at least a true roll and a true run when you are running around on the field. And at least if it's flat, you're taking out the account of the potential of the ball going different ways, which oftentimes happens on a crappy grass field. And there's plenty of crappy grass fields. And all it takes is one rain or one football team to mess up a beautiful grass field. And then it takes a long time for that grass to grow back. And it's not going anywhere. I just hope we get to a point where you can't tell the difference. Is it live or is it Memorex? Well, is it synthetic or is it grass? We'll get to that point at a certain point. Maybe not in my lifetime, but we're certainly heading in that direction. What else, Mosse? I think there's another one.
Yep. Last one. Scott Summers. U.S. soccer divorce from Soccer United marketing. What are the consequences for MLS, et cetera? Pundits suggesting it's a big deal without saying why.
Yeah, so this is news that broke over the last 24 hours, in that Soccer United marketing, which is a extension and an arm and a revenue-generating part, and a massive revenue-generating part for Major League Soccer, which has had a long-standing relationship selling commercial rights for the United States Soccer Federation, that when that contract is up at the end of 2022, the United States Soccer Federation is taking their commercial rights that they sell, broadcast rights and sponsorship rights and all the different things that they sell, and they're bringing it in-house. What this means is the United States Soccer Federation is adding more risk, because under the contract with some, there was a guaranteed amount of money. So through the good times or the bad times, they always got a guaranteed amount of money. And certainly through the pandemic, they got a guaranteed amount of money. And so that stability is important to different people. Well, they're taking it in-house with the understanding that, yes, they're going to assume more risk because they don't have that guarantee, but they believe that they can, on their own, generate more money doing it in-house. That means they're going to have to hire people to do that. The other part of this is that there is a evergreen type of criticism out there when it comes to the relationship between Soccer United marketing / MLS and the United States Soccer Federation. Part of that criticism has been that there were conflict of interests out there when it came to giving preferential treatment to Major League Soccer because of its connection to some, and because everybody is kind of sleeping together. That will now theoretically dissipate because that relationship will not be there. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't use some going forward, and they may use some going forward in some sort of capacity. The other thing that will be interesting is that there was a bundling, as in many businesses out there, in order to maximize your profit and ultimately maximize the value that you have. Oftentimes things were bundled together. United States men's national team broadcast rights with MLS, those types of things. If there is a debundling that now happens, we're going to get a much more accurate and I guess a more interesting type of valuation of some of these assets that people have, and some of these entities that are being sold. So your men's national team, your women's national team. Now, I know somebody asked me on Twitter that about that this is going to make things more affordable. Don't think for a second that the United States Soccer Federation is doing this because they want to make less money. The onus is now on them, and the desire to go out there and to monetize these these assets that they have, that doesn't go anywhere. And not for nothing, but the United States women's national team's lawsuit, which is asking for $66 million in damage. Who knows if how that ultimately ends out. So the United States Soccer Federation is going to have to go out there and generate a lot of money and continue to generate a lot of money. And that is going to be a focus going forward when it comes to the prices of tickets, where those games ultimately are played, the relationships that they had. But it'll just maybe give us a better understanding of what the values of these these teams are out there on the market. So ultimately, I think that this is potentially a good thing going forward for the United States Soccer Federation in the message that it sends, and probably ultimately the business that they believe they are going to be able to generate when it comes to bringing this stuff in house. And there will be more stories as we go forward. But that news broke over here, and for those that think about these things, I think it was important, and I think it's going to be interesting to follow going forward. All right, Mosse, anything else when it comes to Ask Alexi?
Here we go. Here's the catchphrase. That's it.
We're going to get T-shirts made up. It actually isn't it, Mosse, because I have pulled out a audio question to use in my one for the road. So we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, I will show you why I have done that. All right, don't go anywhere. All right, we are back, and it's time for my one for the road, which happens at the end of each and every pod, and this pod is no different. And I pulled out one of these audio questions because somebody took me to task for my one for the road last week, in which, if you listened, you will know that I talked about leaning into the Americanness out there and my desire to have us stop apologizing and to champion a lot of the Americanness that we have. And so Samuel had a question, and a very good question, when it comes to the way that I framed my my response to all the goings on over there in Columbus. So let's listen to Samuel and what he has to say.
Hey, Alexi and Mosse. My name is Samuel Munoz. I just finished listening to your One for the Road segment on your most recent episode. Alexi, in that segment, you talked about how you wished more MLS teams would embrace their Americanness and be more unapologetically American. I know this is something you have believed in for quite some time, so I was very surprised by your reaction and lack of sympathy or support, at least it seemed on Twitter, for Crew fans in the recent attempted rebrand of the Columbus Crew. It seems that you should have sided with the fans in keeping the original Americanized team name instead of changing towards a more generic Eurocentric Blank City FC type of name. These Crew fans were in their protest trying to protect their very much Americanized traditional team name, and were being exactly what you wish more teams in MLS would be, unapologetically American. So I was hoping you would clarify your stance on that issue. It seems that you should be proud of the fact that an original MLS team with all its Americanness will continue to be just that, and it was all because of the passion and determination of its unapologetically American fan base. By the way, I'm an LA Galaxy fan. If the Galaxy ever drop Galaxy from the name, I will riot. Love the show, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right, Samuel, that is a good question, and I can see why you could be and others could be confused and potentially could look at what I said as hypocritical. When I look at what happened with Columbus, I guess the way that I looked at it is that I never saw the Crew going away, the Crew being what we call that team. You know, for me, it has been the Crew. It always has been the Crew, and it was going to continue to be the Crew. And I think, you know, to be fair to the leadership in charge of the Crew, they made it very, very clear that the Crew was still going to be part of what they were doing and was not going away. Now, the official capacity, it wasn't there. But, you know, when we talk about, you know, I don't know, Juventus, you know, the old lady is not necessarily part of their official brand when it comes to it, but we have no problem calling it. When we talk about, you know, Guadalajara, we call them Chivas, but that's not necessarily part of their official brand in their aesthetic. When we look at Minnesota United, all right, I call them the Loons. Many people call them the Loons. They are called the Loons, and yet that's not necessarily a part of their official brand out there. You know, I call Montreal Montreal. I don't call it Club de Foot Montreal or anything like that. So ultimately, I just looked at it as you get to decide. You ultimately do have a say in what your team is called, regardless of what the team wants you to call it, or regardless of what the team does with their crest. But, you know, I also think about it, and maybe you're right. You know, maybe I should have been more supportive of the men and women who felt like the Crew, even if it's not the case. You know, ultimately, how you experience something is very, very important. And maybe I should have been more, I guess, sympathetic, because I can't be empathetic because I've never been through that type of situation, but I can be sympathetic in putting myself in those shoes, in that they felt that something was being taken away from them. And I just looked at it as, you're giving too much power to this, the leadership and to the business part of it. They can't take it away. They can't tell you what you can call your team. That's up to you. And maybe that's a little, from afar, it's easier to say. And, on the ground, maybe I should have had a better understanding of what was going on. But that's the way that I looked at it. But I appreciate you, Samuel, bringing this to my attention. I appreciate the way that you asked the question and asking me to clarify my stance. I actually, this is now, I'm wearing this. I know you can't see me if you're just listening to me, but I'm actually wearing a T-shirt with the new Columbus Crew, actually the new Columbus Crew brand on my shirt, which now actually has Crew as part of the official logo and the official brand out there. So it seems like they have come to agreement going forward, where the logo is still going to change, but the Crew is now incorporated back into the official logo in there. So you can not only call it the Crew, but you can sport the Crew in everything that is being sold or sold to you going forward. So Samuel, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening so intently, and thank you for bringing to my attention when I say something that might be a little bit confusing. As I said, I hope I clarified it there, and make sure you get back to me again, because I definitely will say something confusing and maybe even something hypocritical out there, because I say a lot of stuff and sometimes I forget about the things that I say. We come to the end of yet another State of the Union, and I want to thank our guest, Simon Borg, for coming on today. We've gone a little bit long, but we tend to do that now. And I know over the last couple of years, our show has increased in length. I hope that's not a bad thing. It can be a bad thing, but let us know, and continue to send us these audio things, because I think it adds personality and character to these questions that you don't get. And I'm not saying that we're not going to continue to do the online type of stuff. You certainly can do that, as we did today. But using that number once again, 657-549-2297, it introduces you to us, because this has all kind of been one-sided for the most part. But hearing your voice and hearing how you ask the questions and how you frame them, and different things about yourself and where you're coming from, it just makes it a little more personal. And I like it. And I like the addition of the human element that this has added to the show. So thank you for everybody that did that. And thank you for everybody for downloading and listening and subscribing and doing all the different things out there. And remember, if you have a problem with Mosse's 11, it's his father. Okay. Make sure you blame his father. Mosse, anything to say before we go?
That's it.
There we go. I love it. We got ourselves a catchphrase. I can't wait. I'm going to get bumper stickers. It's going to be great. All right. We'll talk to you again next week. Same time, same place here on the State of the Union podcast. Have a wonderful week. And as always, size the day. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.